Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another podcast. As today is episode 8 of the PCM Hockey Podcast. As once again, I'm tailored with Kelvin, Hector, and Mark Jones. We have a pretty action-packed week. Our first episode of March, which we've delayed it a bit. I've been a little bit busy over these past couple days, and finally today I have a day off, which, this week's been pretty rough for me as an Oilers fan, and not just that with school. It's been pretty challenging, and then to watch my team get absolutely blew out by the Toronto Maple Leafs in every single game. But give it to Toronto, they're a hell of a team. But we'll jump over to the guests. Kelvin, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. It's just very interesting what's going on over here in Flames land, but we'll probably get to that later in the podcast.
Yeah, I think that will be definitely one of the first things that we get up with the new head coach there in Calgary and Sutter, which will definitely be a topic that we'll definitely divulge into. And how you doing today there, Mark?
Good. Just lots of things going on, and I think we probably should touch on. I mean, condolences to the Gretzky family and to all that knew him. I mean, I wasn't one of the ones. There's many that got to meet him, and I wish I had, but I didn't. And it's always sad, you hear someone. I mean, not just because he was notable, but I mean, it's just it's I don't know how to put it. It's just somebody that
a big part of the community.
Well, yeah, I followed him to some degree, and I mean, I think on a personal note, he went through some things similar to what my own late dad went through with, I think a stroke he had at one point. I stand to be corrected, but I believe he did. And, there were just some different things that he battled, and it's just, it's a sad thing. So condolences on that. But apart from that, to shift back to some happier things. I mean, yeah, it's interesting going on, seeing everything going on with Calgary and with Vancouver and then with Edmonton and Vancouver picking up a win yesterday. It was good, and they played well. And now they've set the bar. They've got to come up with more efforts like that. There's no more wriggle room for them having these 1-5 records over spans of 6 games or whatever they've done. So.
It's kind of funny they'll talk about the Vancouver Canucks being Toronto. I keep seeing memes of these, rock, paper, scissors, where it's like, Edmonton's like the paper and Vancouver's or Toronto's the rock, and et cetera, et cetera. And I keep seeing these memes around the internet. It's just so funny. Like, Vancouver could beat Toronto, and Edmonton can't even get a W over the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's funny how this whole Canadian division goes. And you know what? There's some moments of time where I like kind of like these baseball series matchups, which I think we'll definitely get into talking about later on in the episode, because we're 25 games down almost for every team, even a bit more for Vancouver. But we're almost near that mark, and we'll kind of talk about how we all, because I'm not a big fan. Like, I kind of sort of like the baseball series sort of thing that they got going on, but I think we'll get on to the first story of today, and that's the Darryl Sutter signing. So I'll send that off to Calvin on his thoughts and what he thinks Darryl Sutter will bring to the Calgary Flames.
Well, to start, it's maybe a good thing we pushed the podcast back to when we did, because we would have recorded it before the Darryl Sutter news even broke. So great that we get to talk about it, because last night, after the Flames ended up beating Ottawa 7-3 at the Saddledome, news comes out that Jeff Ward was relieved of his duties, and who do the Flames replace him with? But none other than Darryl Sutter, who has coached the Flames before and almost won a Stanley Cup. It was in. It was in. Okay, you're gonna ask any Flames fan.
I even as an Oilers fan, I agree. It was in without a doubt.
So Sutter should have had a Stanley Cup coaching for the Flames, but he didn't. Anyways, he had some good talented coaches: Iginla, Conroy, Jelena, like a bunch of great players. Kiprusoff, like in his prime, and so the Flames, obviously after that 04 Cup run, kind of staggered a bit. And toward the 2010s, they needed a coaching change, so they just made Sutter the GM and then relieved him of coaching, and then brought a new coach. I can't pinpoint. I forget what coach it was, because it's been a coaching carousel basically since Sutter left. Anyways, so many coaches later, now we're in 2021, and Sutter's out for revenge. He wants to get the cup in Calgary. He spent time with the Kings and got 2 cups, which is unbelievable. Two cups in 4 years. So nothing to just kind of brush off the shoulder, like all under Darryl Sutter coaching.
Well, that
and now
Sutter
he's back
just
with
in
the
3 years. He won 2 cups in 3 years for Sutter.
Oh yeah, sorry, 2 cups in 3 years. Excuse me. But like, just to get that caliber of coaching back in Calgary, and I've read some people commenting saying, "Oh, he's an old style coach. It's not going to work with the way the game is now." That's not necessarily true, because a lot of people want to see the game go back to what it was. So by bringing Sutter in, maybe he changes things up. He knows how to get under players' butts or skins, so to speak, so that they perform. And it's just a fresh start for Calgary. I don't know if it's going to spell for this season. Sutter signed for 3 years, so that's the rest of this season, including 2 more. So it's not just let's see what you can do for this season and we'll go from there. It's we have trust in you. Here's the reins. Coach the way we know you can coach. And Sutter actually said that he was only gonna come back to the NHL for coaching if it was one of 2 cities. Well, obviously Calgary was one, and the other one was Chicago. So just 2 amazing hockey clubs, and he's back with Calgary, which is great. And last night, when my dad didn't know the news yet, so I had called him right when I read that the coaching change happened, and I call him on the phone, and he's like, "What?" I said, "Did you hear the news?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, Walter Gretzky died. That's very sad." I'm like, "It is very sad, but that's not the news. Flames fired Jeff Ward." And he's like, "What?" And then I'm like, "Yeah, guess who they replace him with?" And he's like, "Oh, Gerard Gallant." And I'm like, "You're crazy. Why would they the Flames are not known for spending money on coaches, so not Gerard Gallant." And then I say Darryl Sutter, he drops an F-bomb, and he doesn't do that normally. He's like, "You're effing kidding me." And I'm like, "No." like this is a shock. Like, and to me too, when I read that, it's insane.
I think it was to everyone. I thought it was like a fake news.
Yeah, you texted our group chat, and I was like, "Wait, what is Payton talking about?" Get on my Twitter right away and see that. And I was like shocked. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, how do I feel about this?"
I didn't know how to feel about it either when I first looked at it. It's kind of like it's a weird move. But I think honestly, like, when I first initially thought of it, I'm like, "Oh, Darryl Sutter." Like, I was like everyone else, old-fashioned coach. I don't know if it'll work. But looking at it, I mean, he coached a very good LA Kings team, and you look at the LA Kings team now, they're definitely nowhere near what the Calgary Flames have right now. But a lot of the same kind of qualities that LA had is kind of what Calgary has, and they need that kind of gritty coach, that old-fashioned coach, because you have a lot of kind of, gritty players there in Calgary with Lucic and Tkachuk. And plus the locker room is absolute gong show there in Calgary as well. And I think Sutter will absolutely help with that locker room there in Calgary. I mean, we've seen what LA went through in the years that they won their cups. They went through a lot of stuff, and Sutter was able to, calm them down. Even when they were a young team, they had a lot of young players. So honestly, I think this is a huge boost for the Calgary Flames. We'll have to see if it's correct on that fact, but I'll let you continue there, Calvin.
Well, yeah, you raised great points there, and I was gonna say, I mean, I pointed out about how the Flames aren't known for spending money on coaches, and I don't think Darryl Sutter was asking a whole lot, because as I did mention, he said, I only want to come back for one of 2 cities. There's only 2 teams that could bring me back, and of course the Flames needed a coach, and he's willing to do it. So I'm guessing it wasn't really let's go out and find the most expensive coach we can to fix our team. Let's get a coach who wants to be here, sees what's here, and thinks they can fix it. And so that's why Darryl Sutter, as shocked as I was to hear that, now that I've let it sink in and I went to bed and let it sink in, and now that I've had a day to kind of sit and stir and think about it, I think it is a great move. But I'm still kind of mailing it in for this season. I don't expect much out of the Flames right off the gate of having Sutter, because of course they had Ward for the last, I don't even know if it was a full season technically, from the amount of games he coached. I don't even think he coached a full 80-something games for the Flames.
He coached less than that, because he took over, what was it, like second month into the season when Bill Peters got fired there. Yeah, I don't think Jeff Ward didn't have very much time there. It's kind of funny because he got his contract re-upped during the offseason as well.
Yeah, well, and they just took the interim tag off of Jeff Ward, because that's what he was. He was the interim, and then obviously we make the playoffs with him, and honestly, I wasn't buying it too much. Okay, in hindsight, whatever. No, I literally was thinking, I wasn't 100% convinced he was the right choice to take the interim tag off and make him head coach. I was definitely thinking the Flames are gonna change it up. He wasn't gonna stay as the head coach, so I was shocked when they reinstated him. Of course, I wish him all the best. Like, I hope he can find another coaching job in the league, because I'm not saying he's the worst coach ever. I just didn't think he was the right coach for the way the Flames were built. He seemed to be more of a defensive power play style of coach, and it showed in the Flames team statistics under Jeff Ward. They were 5th in the league for power play percentage, but every other statistic was middle of the pack or close to the bottom for scoring, goals allowed, penalty kill. So obviously Jeff Ward just wasn't the fit of a coach, and that's why I think there is a lot of excitement that Darryl Sutter's coming back, because he brings grit. And as you heard me say the last podcast, that was one of my questions. When are the Flames going to get grittier in coaching? Well, my question was obviously answered. So that's all I have to say about the topic, but very excited to see what can happen with the return coach.
Yeah, like I always felt like, sorry to cut you off there, Mark. I was just going to add a quick thing in there. Because over the past couple of years with Calgary, like having Glenn Gulletson and Bob Hartley and Bill Peters and just the list of coaches go on there for Calgary, but nothing's really fit the team. And I think Sutter will fit this team pretty well. The first time back in 2002-03 when he was hired, he only went 19-18 with that team that he was given. So I don't know if you'll see the effects this season with Darryl Sutter, but I think in the future long run for the Calgary Flames, especially going into this offseason, I think you'll see massive improvements with Sutter, being the head coach, and you'll see little changes. But I don't expect too much from him, but you never know. It could be a comeback season for Calgary. I mean, they're not that far away from a playoff spot right now. They are only 2 points back of the Montreal Canadiens and only a few back of the Edmonton Oilers as well. So they could easily jump into a playoff spot. And Mark, you could go ahead there, bud.
I was just going to say, just for the record, Peters, just because some people might, it is a difference. He resigned. He wasn't fired. I mean, he may have been pushed, but he resigned, just to be clear on that.
Right, yeah.
When Bill Peters, yeah. So, no, that's all I wanted to say on that. You carry on.
Yeah, I guess we'll jump on to the games for the Calgary Flames over the past couple of days since the 24th of February. They went 2-2-1 over that little stretch, having a couple bad losses there against the Sens, and couple demolition derbies like last night where they won 7-3. But I'll send this over to Calvin on his game thoughts, and then we'll jump over to Mark for the Vancouver games. So go ahead there, Calvin.
Well, we had a coaching change after this road trip, so I mean that kind of says a lot about the last little stretch of games. It was the Flames that couldn't find their footing, because I mean we played 3 games of 4 nights. That's not you can't blame your losses on that all the time. But to be fair, they did have 2 tough games against Toronto, and then they had to go play Ottawa the next night after losing in overtime to Toronto. So not only are they playing extra minutes, but then they have to travel to Ottawa. I know it's not a huge thing because Ottawa's not too far away from Toronto, but there's still that travel. They're still having to move hotels or take a longer bus ride or whatever, so that adds to the fatigue. So they lose 6-1. Blowout to the worst team in the North Division. And Flamesland was already reaching for that panic button, but I think when that happened, it was almost a slam. Because I would listen on the Fan 960, Pat Steinberg does his overtime show where fans get to call in. And I wasn't even mad about the game. I was just like happy to tune into overtime to hear the fans rip into the team, because I was like, how do you lose 6-1? How do you lose that bad? Yeah, I understand if you lose 3-2 in overtime, or 3-2 and you had to battle back and they had 2 on you or whatever. Okay, understand that. But a blowout, that's what was like just hurtful to see.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, then you move on to the next game, and it was a complete 180 reverse. The Flames come out firing on all cylinders and they win 6-3. As a Flames fan, you're thinking, okay, so they know how to play hockey. But this has been basically all season, where they'll lose a game and the next game play amazing and then go back to losing ways again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they're a 500 team. That's what 500 means. Every game you win, you lose one.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, of course, we had to play Ottawa 4 games in a row. So that's only 2 games in. Third game, you're thinking, okay, Flames just wiped the floor with them. Now they have a day of rest as well. And they come back. And they lose again, 5-1 this time. Now, what the hell? So not only are you blown out once, but now you're blown out again by the weakest team in the North Division. So, of course, once again, Flamesland just are losing our minds. We're like, something needs to change. Except the thing was, you couldn't pinpoint. Is it the coaching? Is it the players? Is it the general manager? Is it the locker room? What the hell's going on? Nobody knew the answer. But here's the thing. I'm guessing, going back to us talking about the Sutter coaching change, is that it was either after the first blowout to Ottawa, but most likely the second blowout on that Monday, where the Flames said, okay, we're going to go contact Darryl Sutter. We're going to say, we're thinking of making a coaching change. Do you want to come in and coach? Mm-hmm. And they left it up to him. And I'm guessing the reason why it dragged out to yesterday was because Sutter gave it a couple days of thought and didn't get back to the Flames with his yes until either the Wednesday or the Thursday. And so the Flames were already on the road and they didn't want to disturb things. So they waited till after the game was done to say, well, Jeff Ward's fired, and here comes Darryl Sutter. So that just says a lot about this last 4 or 5 games that they played over this past week, and that is, I think, that obviously it was a coaching change that needed to be made. It got made, and I just want to point out that the St. Louis Blues 2 years ago were the worst team in the league and somehow came back to win the Stanley Cup. So it's not over for the Flames, but I'm not really crossing my fingers too much.
Yeah, you said it perfectly right there. It's definitely not over until the last game is played. So I'm excited to see what the Calgary Flames do, especially with Darryl Sutter. And I'm hoping that we have some more intense battles with the Battle of Alberta coming up with Darryl Sutter. Should be fun. Tippett versus Sutter. So we'll head it off over to Vancouver now, who... they're not looking too good. They're still not doing the greatest. The last time we talked, they lost that day. And then they had practically a 4-game losing streak going throughout Winnipeg and the Edmonton Oilers. They got a winner against the Jets, but then they lost again. But they were able to beat the Toronto Maple Leafs just a night ago. So we'll send this one over to Mark on his thoughts on the Vancouver Canucks over these past 2 weeks.
Well, I think the biggest thing that it comes down to is they haven't been getting great goaltending. And we've touched on this before, where last year the number of times that even during the playoffs, I mean, that whole phrase that came out, when Demko took over the net and, Vegas kind of joked and said we were Demco'd or whatever. I mean, he's kind of getting his form back. There's been a lot of, anybody can make excuses, but I mean, just doing a quick look at how things have unfolded over the last couple of weeks. I mean, you look at, it's not just the last couple of weeks, but if you go back to the beginning of February, where, I mean, they basically, left 12 points on the table. I mean, they went something like, I think it was 5 or 6 games undefeated, starting
6.
beginning of February. There were, back-to-back losses, 2 days. First of all, they played 4. I'm just doing a quick calculation here. 4 games in about 6 nights between Montreal and Toronto in both cities. They lose all those games. They lose another game to Toronto, so they're down 0-5. Then they go into Calgary comes here. They lose. They finally get a win. But then they're back to, their win-loss. and then it's been very spotty, and thus why they're where they're at. I mean, amazingly, mathematically, they're not further buried down in the standings. I mean, they're still within striking distance of the playoffs. And I mean, but like I said, I guess we said this off air. They can't afford to have any more of these runs. I mean, they've used up all their their mulligans in golfing terms. All of this. The last game last night was based on what we're recording this, was a good all round team effort, and they finally got Jake Virtanen to step up and do what he often did. I'm not going to hold my breath that we're going to see that consistently from him, but I do believe the team can play better as they did with Demko in net. And this is not a slight on Holtby, but there's probably more to it. I never studied all his numbers, but there's probably a reason why Washington
been downhill.
why they gave up on him since he won the cup. I mean, there's a reason why Washington probably gave up on him. And I mean, can he still be a capable goalie? Yes, but I think you've got to run with, if you don't, I mean, if there's 30, I think there's about 29 games left in the Canucks season. I think realistically, you've got to let Demko have about 20 of those games at least. And you've got to ride him. And this is a perfect chance. I would be very surprised if they don't come back with him tomorrow. Then I will question what Green is thinking, because this is like a playoff type mode. If it's back to back, literally like a Wednesday, Thursday, okay, I can maybe see you don't play the goalie. But then if you're going to have 2-3 nights off after that, I mean, in this case, you've got to play Demko. How you wouldn't come back with Demko tomorrow makes no sense. And like I say, if Vancouver can, now the pressure is on to string some wins together, and it's very capable. It's very capable to do it. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow night, but if you look over, they've got Toronto, and then two between now and next Wednesday. You've got Toronto and Montreal combined 3 times. Very easily, they should be able to pick up two wins out of those 3 games, and then they're right, climbing in the right direction. And of course, your team is who they play on. They host on the 13th, that being Edmonton, Payton. So it's just one game at a time. That's all they can do. And my 2 cents, if I can jump in just to throw in on the Calgary thing, I think it's an interesting move on bringing Sutter back. It's been done before. Montreal's done it twice with Julian and Therian at various times. They were there before. They brought them back. Sutter's proven. He's gotten, you don't get Stanley Cups just by showing up. He obviously had the right talent, and he coached things right. Will it be an instant, or will this be, the St. Louis Blues of, a couple of years ago, 2.0? I'm not saying it will happen. Anything is possible, but what I will say is they didn't want to go with basically a rookie. I mean, and that's what Ward was. He wasn't a head coach before. They had a guy in Peters who, for well-known reasons, he resigned, and they needed to, I think, go back. If they were going to make a change, they needed a proven NHL coach. Sidebar. Apparently Green's been given that, it can be the kiss of death in Vancouver, the endorsement that they're not looking to change anything. And but again, if they were ever going to change again in Vancouver with coaching, and I don't think they should right now either, if they were, they need to be done with this. They've now had 2 coaches that have not ever been head coaches in the NHL. Their last 2 coaches, Green and Desjardins, but I think Green is proving himself. So all I'm saying is that Calgary wanted to go with somebody that was a proven winner, and that's what they've got in getting Darryl Sutter. So good on them.
Yeah, for sure. Vancouver has a couple big games coming up here as well. Of course, like you were saying with Toronto, Montreal, they're going to be big ones, especially probably for the Calgary Flames fans as well. I mean, you don't want the Vancouver Canucks winning because that means you'll have Vancouver kind of on your butt, but you would also like to see Montreal lose so you can, jump up in the standings as well. The only problem that the Vancouver Canucks have is that they have 27 games played, which is the most in the North Division. The other two lowest, or I guess the other lowest is Ottawa, but in the playoffs you got Toronto and Edmonton up with 25. Calgary's just back there with 24, and we'll jump on the Edmonton Oilers, which I gotta say, it was a pretty hard week for me, as making game reviews and talking about the same crap every time. I gotta ask this: what the hell is Tippett doing? I was a big fan when he got assigned to the team, but his lineups and just the way he's managing this team is it's a gong show. I seen the new lineups for tonight going up against Calgary, and I don't know why he always does this, but he feels the need to put big bodies in the lineup when, we're struggling on goal scoring. We actually took Tyler Ennis out to put in Devin Shore in the goddamn lineup, which absolutely makes no sense to me. Our best depth line has been Ennis, Kara, and Archibald. And it's been one of our best lines. But now we're going to throw some bum named Devin Shore alongside of Kara and Archibald. I'm not liking it. And then you're having both Jones and Ethan Bear sitting out because they made a couple mistakes over the Toronto Maple Leafs, one of the best teams in the league. But you're still keeping Tyson Barrie up on the top pairing when all he does is gets mangled every time he's out there. Every time someone touches him, he falls over. It is an absolute joke how bad he plays defensively. Like, sure, when you ask him to, puck handle, cool. You ask him to hit the net, oh no, he's going to miss by a goddamn mile and probably hit one of your teammates in the face. That's what Barrie does. I remember when I was younger, my coaches, every time, I was a defenseman, keep your puck on the ground. And I don't know how many times I've seen this over this year, about how many defensemen have hit players in the face. And I don't know if it's just not being taught anymore or what, or they're telling the defenseman to shoot high, whatever it is. But defensemen need to shoot on the ground. That's what I've always been taught, because defensemen don't have a handle of their slap shot. And Barry's slap shot it's disgusting how bad it is and how we rely on him so much. Evan Bouchard, our younger player, who I think, honestly, has been our best defenseman. And I honestly think he could play on the power play, because you look at the New York Islanders with Noah Dobson, same draft year as Evan Bouchard. He is playing on top power play time. You know why? Because Barry Trotz says that is his greatest strength, is passing the puck and shooting. So he plays that guy where he will perform best, which is offensive opportunities, and not just that on the power play. Barry has been an absolute buffoon, and the only reason why he's on the power play is because he gets those secondary assists. I'm actually missing Klefbom on that power play, because the way that Klefbom could move that puck on the power play was just 100% better than what Tyson Barrie can do. Tyson Barrie's slap shot is the weakest. He can't even hit the net. It's outrageous, and I still do not know why we're placing Barrie alongside of Nurse. It's practically putting Carlson alongside of Brent Burns. It's the dumbest idea somebody's ever had in their life, putting two offensive defensemen alongside of each other. Now, I think Nurse, on the other hand, has been doing great. He definitely did struggle against this Toronto team, and for all the Edmonton Oilers fans getting all panicked about the Toronto Maple Leafs and stuff like that, don't worry about it, man. We're only having to face them a couple more times this season, and yeah, it sucks that we lost to them a lot, but I mean, Toronto's a tank of a team. You want to talk about a real beefy team this year? 18-5-2, and one of the best teams in the NHL, even with the injuries that they had. They shut out the Oilers with Michael Hutchinson in the back of the net. That's how good defensively the Toronto Maple Leafs were with TJ Brodie and Jake Muzzin and Morgan Riley. They were doing a great job, especially even Justin Hall. So I give full respect to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I think the Oilers will rebound. Not having McDavid score any points in the past 3 games, got to aggravate him. And also, once again, Tippett keeps doing this thing that really pisses me off, is he broke up the Draisaitl line again. The Nuge, Draisaitl, Yamamoto line that worked so well last year. We had one of the best records with that line, and once again, after having a pretty good game against the Toronto Maple Leafs and actually scoring the only goal during that series, he's decided to break it up again, which absolutely makes no sense to me. It's a little bit frustrating watching as a fan, seeing that, you have players that could play in the lineup, especially since they're benching Jones and Bear in this next game and playing Chris Russell, which I don't know why we need to play defensive defensemen on this team when, like Tippett was saying, oh, we need to get the puck out of our zone. Yeah, let's throw Russell and Legson in the lineup. Yeah, that will really get the puck out of our zone. Great job. Absolute buffoon Dave Tippett is. I'm not a big fan of him. I don't think he does very good when he's coaching a team full of superstars. I give him full respect when he was coaching, the Arizona Coyotes. But the way that the Arizona Coyotes were that they didn't have any all-stars. They were just a team that was filled with a bunch of tweener players, and Dave Tippett only made it to the playoffs a couple times. I don't know if he is the correct coach for McDavid, especially with the way that we've been coaching, nor do we have the team to really, make a deep playoff run with this team anyways. Now, sure, we have seen crazy things before, and we've seen runs, but I'm saying this right now, and I don't know when it'll happen, but I don't think Dave Tippett will ever win a cup with the Edmonton Oilers, just because I don't think he fits the team, and he just doesn't play the right players at the right moments of time.
So that was our heated moment of the podcast,
Yep.
Brought to you by Payton ripping open the Edmonton Oilers. Anyways, let me ask you this question, Payton, and I guess Mark, you can answer this too. What would you rather have? Would you rather lose? And I'm talking about this not in a literal way. Like, don't say, well, I'd rather this because there's more points in this scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But in the hypothetical, moral way, would you rather lose 3 straight to the Toronto Maple Leafs, the number 1 team in the North Division, or split a 4-game series with Ottawa? Because they're both not something you would want to do.
That would be a tough one because, you split a series with Ottawa, at least you go 500 during that stretch and you don't have to really deal with it. The 3 games against Toronto, I guess, are respectable because it is the best team in the league, especially in the North Division. You look at the entirety of the North Division this year, it's Toronto and just everybody else. That's basically what it has been, and probably what was predicted by a lot of fans was that Toronto was going to do good, but I don't think everyone knew they were going to do this good. I think, I'd rather take a split in a series because at least I win some games and you lose some games. You kind of learn from it, and it ended up being Sutter going to Calgary. Now that might be either a blessing in disguise or it might not work. Who knows? I'll send it over to Mark.
Yeah, I think, and I know you said it at the outset, it's a tough thing when you ask the question, Calvin. Yeah, because obviously, getting a split is a split. Whoever the team is, you're picking up points, you're adding to what the whole thing's about. If you were to, I think the better thing is to get the split with Ottawa, because anytime you're going to get, 0-3, unless you're like, I don't know, even nowadays the expansion teams don't want to do that. But unless you're an expansion team, if you're a team that's established and whether you're in rebuild, whatever, if you're going to lose even to the top team, you want to be competitive. And I know that sounds token, but so I think I'd rather see you're going to split a series against Ottawa, so kind of where you're at. If you're going to get, go 0-3 against what appears to be a very good team with Toronto, and clearly they've had talent. The reason I put it like that is because how many years have we seen Toronto? And it was my prediction at the beginning of the year. I figured it was going to be another year, and the season's not done yet, but they've done very well so far. And I just, they're a very good team. But how many years have we seen Toronto? They blow it in the playoffs. How many times have they done that? So the whole point is that, right now, based on what we've seen, Toronto's a very good team. And you wouldn't want to see yourself, though, if you're, unless, like I say, your first year Seattle coming in next year, you lose because you kind of put a mishmash of players together and whatever. You lose all three games to them. Then you would say, okay, yeah, we just don't have the talent. At least if you can compete against whoever else it is, then you're rather saying, okay, well, we're not getting wiped out by these guys. Yeah. So that's the only way I can answer that.
Yeah, and those are very fair assessments of the situation. I mean, I'm going to give my opinion here on it because I'm a Flames fan, so I experienced the split against Ottawa. Haven't experienced losing 3 straight to Toronto, but the Flames haven't played very well against the Leafs. They have 1 overtime win to show for it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, sorry, it was the 2-0 one. Anyways, they have 1 win to show out of 4 meetings against Toronto. So it's basically like losing 3 straight. It could almost relate to the same. But I think on like an embarrassment side of things, if you're splitting a 4-game series with the worst team in your division that doesn't even have double-digit wins yet, and they're almost 30 games into the season, that is a little more embarrassing on the morale side. I don't think you're going to hang your head too low when you're playing Toronto, who's has all those weapons. As long as you're not getting blown out by them every game. Yeah, maybe 1 out of 3 you do, but if they're close battles and you're still losing them, well, what can you do as the top team in the league? You can go on and be like, okay, well, this is what we need to get to for the next time we have to face them.
Yeah.
So I see that as being more of a plus than not knowing what the hell to do because you split with the worst team in the division. So I'm going opposite of what you guys say, and I'd say I'd rather lose 3 straight to Toronto, just as it doesn't raise as many questions, I think, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it depends on what you want to go for. Like, for me, it sucks losing 3 games to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like, it's an embarrassment in the fact that you just have to deal with the fans. And then on the other side, it's Ottawa, and you have to deal with almost the entire, like, world laughing at you if you lose the Ottawa because, it's the Ottawa Senators, which I don't know why people hate on the Ottawa Senators. I still think, yeah, they're the worst team in the division, and most teams should beat them. But, they still have a lot of good players there, Stützle and Tkachuk, that, can beat you if you're having an off night. If you do, I mean, split a series, that's pretty hard, especially, losing the way that you guys lost, especially against the Ottawa Senators, burnt as well, losing 5-1 and 6-1. All right, Ottawa is not known for their well defensive team. They're 31st in the league on goals against, so this should be a team that you could be easily able to score. Now, I'm going to ask another question, and this was referring back to the start of the show. How do you guys like these type of baseball series matchups? Do you like, the 2 in a row, 3 in a row against the same team, or does it get a bit boring for you guys? We'll send this one off to Mark to start things off.
I think it's a good different way of doing it. Like you say, like the baseball thing. I think it's a little bit of a playoff feel, not in the playoffs. And I think, it's a very compact season. They've had to do something and obviously limit the amount of traveling. I mean, I think to, that these teams that are so used to being in the East so much, they're having to come out here, for the Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton. They're doing it a few times. I mean, I guess they do that in the regular season anyways, but I'm waiting for it to wear maybe them down, maybe Montreal down. The fact of the matter is, because the Western teams always are used to traveling, and so I guess what I say is I think it's a good way to do it. Would I like to see that stay? You go back to a regular schedule and then, whoever, I just don't think, I think it's good to have the variety, but there's some advantage to it. I mean, if you decided you're going to have 2 games against Vegas, out of however many you're playing in a normal season, or, whatever you're going to do, you wouldn't see the Montreals and the Torontos all the time. But if you're going to do a couple games, maybe one series of games in one city between Calgary and Vancouver is, this year you're doing 2 of them back to back in Calgary or something. It may not be a bad idea. It's, like I say, it is kind of like that baseball type feel and almost like a miniature playoff feel. So it's certainly different, and every team is having to endure it. So it sort of shows how well you can adjust and, be ready for the next game kind of thing if you don't win, or how well you can maintain things if you do win and play the next game.
Mm-hmm. Calvin, go ahead.
To be honest, I'm not really into the whole playing the same team more than a couple times. Like in normal seasons, you have the odd back-to-back home and home kind of thing where you're playing a team or you're playing them 2 times in 3 nights sort of deal. Mostly a regional team, usually it happens. But I mean, like 4 games in a row against Ottawa, was not fun to watch. I barely paid attention to most of the games, to be completely honest. I did not watch much. I mean, I watched most of the game last night just because it was home and the Flames were wearing Blasty, and I like watching when they're wearing Blasty because Blasty's a great jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Don't at me about that. Blasty needs to stay forever and never go away again. But like, that was the longest of the season for the Flames, and I think for the rest of the season. But we do actually play Ottawa again. We play Edmonton in Edmonton and then come home the next night, play Ottawa one more time. So technically it's like a 5-game series just with a stop in Edmonton in between. And so, yeah, the rest of the season, I think we only have a 3-game series against Winnipeg and a 3-gamer against Montreal, and the rest are split up into 2 or less. So for the Flames, yeah, I like it where it's just the 2 games. If it's 3, that's all right. But, like, come on, get a little chippy in the second and third game. Don't just play 3 soft, boring games, and that'll waste my time. So I guess that's my opinion. But I do like just having you play the same team twice for the animosity. Although I have been disappointed because a lot of games this year haven't really had a spark to them.
I think that's been the thing with the North Division. Like, you look at some other divisions. I know the division at like Boston and Washington and New York. You've been seeing so many fights between all those teams, but then you look at the North Division and you look at it and you say, like, there's just been a bunch of goals. Like, it's just where everything is happening all at once. There's no defense. It's just all offense. And I mean, I enjoy the all offense, but when I'm watching the Battle of Alberta games, when Oilers beat down the Flames 7-1, there was no fights. There was no, physical side of the game, which, I sometimes miss. I like seeing that animosity. I like seeing that it's like a playoff series, especially the 3 losses against Toronto. Like, yeah, sure, you've seen Chason cross-check somebody in the face for no apparent reason. Yeah, you see that at the end of the game, but then you see nothing else afterwards. And I mean, that's just the Toronto Maple Leafs anyways. They're kind of just, the kind of like the weaker team. They're definitely more physical, but they're definitely one of the weaker teams. They're definitely an offensive-driven team there in Toronto. But you haven't really been seeing a lot of fights. And for me, I'm kind of in the middle on this, like, series kind of not, like, watching 3 games in a row of Toronto Maple Leafs beat down the Edmonton Oilers sucked. And I guess that's how you feel as a baseball fan, too, if the Blue Jays are going up against the Yankees when the Blue Jays, like, are rebuilding or whatever. It sucks to watch the Yankees just pummeling the Blue Jays. It's not a lot of fun to kind of watch those games, and especially since it's baseball. Baseball's not, the most entertaining thing, especially, I guess, for me, my younger audience. Baseball is harder to pay attention to, especially if it's a beatdown by that other team. So I'm excited when COVID's over and we get to go back to like the normal schedules where you face like one team once and then you get to kind of see some other teams. I don't mind seeing the same team over and over again, but it's a lot to deal with. You're dealing with the Canadian fan bases, and we're some of like Canada is looked at as some nice people here in Canada, but when it comes to hockey, we're a-holes. I mean, we are a-holes. Calgary Flames, like, what was it, like 77%? Same with Vancouver, up there as like the most vulgar fan bases. Edmonton wasn't that far behind. You have Toronto up there as well. I mean, you talk about hockey here in Canada.
Don't go to someone's opposing barn and start chirping their team. Then you're asking for it. Like, well, that's
what Twitter is.
That's Canadian 101. You gotta know
Twitter
that.
Is.
Come on.
Twitter's like
Canadian
it's
hockey.
like after a hockey game, like for Canadians, it's like a war. It's like World War III down there in the Twitter comments section. You have like Oilers fan going up against Maple Leafs fans, and Maple Leafs fans saying dumb crap like Matthews is better than McDavid, and then you have like an outrage of Oilers fans like, what the hell are you saying? Are you crapping my pants, dude? What the hell?
Yeah, and you were telling me how on your Twitch you're doing a live stream for the Oilers, and you had Leafs fans like just going at you. So
yeah,
we're pretty vicious to each other. I just wish we don't really have that on the Americans when they come to visit. I really hope we're not setting a bad example, but I guess so.
Yeah,
But at least, hold on. At least with these baseball style games, the North Division hasn't really had a scenario where like Arizona and St. Louis playing a full freaking playoff series.
Oh my God.
They played 7 games against each other in a row. How, like, I don't understand. They were tweeting each other memes about it just because it's so like ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I think it was a lot to do with cancellations and to catch up with, the schedule and stuff. But yeah, that was definitely insane, the amount of games they were playing. So I think the last topic, what did I want to get onto? Oh yeah, the last topic of the show here is we'll talk about Jack Eichel and the Buffalo Sabres, because this team, I gotta say, what the hell, man? This has become the new dumpster fire. We used to joke about Detroit and Ottawa, but now we're joking around about the Buffalo Sabres. Now
it's the hockey gods. It's the hockey gods getting mad at them for not bringing back the Buffalo logo as their reverse retro jersey, like the red one with the silver. And
so I'll give you guys some numbers. Gods. They have spent $28 million between Skinner, Eichel, and Hall. Now, these guys combined for Skinner, who has 0 goals, Hall, who they paid a pretty good penny for, 2 goals, and Jack Eichel, their star-studded forward, 2 goals. And I'm like, wow. And now you're hearing all these rumors about the Jack Eichel trade rumors and all that stuff. So I'll send this off to Calvin on his thoughts. Do you think Jack Eichel will be traded? And what the hell is going on in Buffalo?
I think if Eichel's getting traded, teams better have no off limits for their roster, because it's going to be a big ask if you want Eichel.
Yeah.
So, I mean, too bad for Detroit, because they're rebuilding and they would love a guy like Eichel, but what the hell can they offer for Eichel unless they want to offer future draft picks? But I don't think Buffalo's like, yeah, let's go with some future. I think they want, something that is a quick fix. I don't think Buffalo's been managed very well. No. I was watching a bar down video actually while I was working the other day, and they were talking like, is Buffalo one of the worst franchises in the NHL in like just the history of franchises, just for management and all around everything? And it's kind of like, it is shocking they're spending as much money as they are for as little productivity as they're getting. Like, I just can't wrap my head around that, because I always complain. I'm like, do the players deserve that much money? I mean, odds are they're going to play another couple seasons the way they are in their contract year. They're getting signed high because they had a good season, but I don't think they're going to last very long. And a lot of times that happens. You get the few superstars who you do have to shell out the big bucks because they're producing no matter what. Like, you got Patrick Kane, Sidney Crosby's had his injury troubles, but usually he's got producing. Alexander Ovechkin. Who else can I name? There's lots of others, but that's just the scenario. Is like, how are they spending this much money and getting no points? And on a side note, it's ruining one of my fantasy leagues because I thought Buffalo was going to slay this year, and it's a sinking ship.
Yeah, it really is. Like, it's unbelievable. I think you hit it dead on. I think this is one of the worst franchises, I think, in NHL history. The worst luck, too. You want to talk about the worst luck with Brett Hall's skate in the crease. And during that time, that was, goalie interference. It should have been no goal, but, they allowed it, and it ended up with the Buffalo Sabres losing the Stanley Cup. And ever since then, they've just been the definition of mediocrity. They were up with the Edmonton Oilers of not being able to make it to the playoffs, and I think Buffalo will go even longer. So we'll send this off to Mark on his quick opinion on the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not totally, in all full disclosure, totally versed on the ins and outs of where Buffalo's at. But clearly, I mean, I've been trying to rack my brain as to when, I think back to, when did they have like really good, certainly you could go way back to, like you talked about Dallas, Buffalo way back. I mean, that's over 20 years ago. And I mean, you're talking about, you guys were just an afterthought back then. So, I mean, it's just, or barely. So the fact of the matter is that I don't know what goes on there. I have heard, and I wish I could attribute it to who it was, but like with Taylor Hall, I forget the analysis that was done on him, because where did he go? He went from Edmonton and then to Jersey, and then to Arizona, and now he's in Buffalo.
Yeah.
And so, I think there's been often talk about that. It's a sad thing. I mean, I don't know what type of deal, if there's a no movement clause with Taylor Hall and these type of things, but there's nothing. The problem is with some of these guys is they get the money. And I mean, I hate to say it, but it seems to be that they seem to, he's not performing. And I don't know enough about why. It's puzzling. I mean, why they're struggling. I do seem to think they've gone through a number of different regimes, and I'd have to really look back and see what's going on. And clearly, I mean, I've seen this in different levels of hockey before, and it doesn't matter if it's the NHL or not. It can be the same thing. If you have the wrong mix of players, you can have a lot of, top end talent, but if they don't form together as the old cliche, a really good team, then you're going to have a problem. And that might be what they're developing. I mean, their management, I don't even know who their manager is right now. If you were to ask me who it is, I mean, I have no idea who their GM even is and what's the qualifications there. They sound like they need somebody in there. Do they go through another change again? Do you either of you know who he is right now? I don't know who it is.
Kevin Adams, he's a rookie GM. He's practically just a definition by a lot of people, they say, is a puppet doll for the Pagulas. Pagulas, the ownership.
Who offers a 1-year, $8 million contract to a player that's moved teams a couple times in the last few seasons?
Well, but not just that, but you don't have any depth.
It's not just idiots in Buffalo. Hall has probably taken his stock in the league way the hell down by the performance he's had this year. There's no way he's going to find a team in the offseason that's going to offer him the money that he's going to want.
He played really good last year. He had 65 in 65 games. He had 52 points. He was not doing that bad, especially in the playoffs. In 9 games, he had 6 points. But what's the stock now?
Well, he hurt him. Yeah, and he just totally hurt himself by doing this contract. I don't know if it was him or his agent recommending it, but it was not smart.
But not even just
that. In my opinion, take a 2-year, $5 million deal. You're getting $2 more million out of it, but at least you're giving yourself a chance that if you have an off season to start with Buffalo, knowing they're wishy-washy, then you have a second season to prove yourself, and then that could bring your stock back up. Because, I mean, in my opinion, fantastic he's tanking right now, because that means that the Flames want to go for him in the off season, they'll probably have the budget to do it. And then he'll want to come to Calgary. I mean,
they bring this guy in. If you're saying he's a rookie GM, I don't understand. Maybe it is an ownership situation there. I mean, why would you bring in with a team that's struggling? I've never understood this whole concept. Everybody needs to get a chance at some point, but there's a time and there's a place, and I just don't know. In my opinion, I don't know who would have been out there, but maybe there wasn't anybody that they wanted that would be willing to come. But sometimes you need to have somebody that's like, if he's a rookie GM, I don't know if he's learned under anybody or if he's outright where he's from. But I think there's been some bad decisions. Just the really quick look at that. I mean, and an $8 million deal for 1 year. I don't know who that really benefits. It definitely benefits Taylor Hall, but how does that benefit Buffalo? Unless they think they were going to get him and he was going to do so well, and they were just giving that 1 year try of him. I mean, I'm speechless on that one.
You know what
sorry, Payton. The GM of Buffalo, was he vetted in? Because a team that you could say had a rookie GM, but they did it the right way, was the Toronto Maple Leafs, because they vetted him for a couple years. He was in the organization, but he wasn't the GM. He was just kind of behind the scenes a little bit.
I think Kevin Adams is just hired there, just as a pure GM. He was brand new. He never GM'd. I think he's played hockey, but he's never really had any experience. In 2011, he was named assistant coach of the Buffalo Sabres. I guess that is something, but he was fired on May 9th, 2013. And so he doesn't last there very long. Adams was named senior vice president and business administrator for the Sabres back in 2019. He was the president of business administration and then was made GM right after that. So definitely not enough qualification, but On the point, I think the reason why they tried to go after Taylor Hall was they tried to do the wow factor and, tried to get their team some juice, but they sacrificed depth. Their depth is terrible. You look up and down that lineup. If you lose somebody in that top six, your team is screwed. I was turning when Jack Eichel was, I think, out with an injury. They were putting Curtis Lazar as their top line centerman. He was playing on the top line for the Buffalo Sabres. And that's telling you how bad.
Lazar's the best player in the league. What are you talking about? He's from Salmon Arm. You can't talk bad about him.
Okay. Jeez. But it's definitely going to be a mystery. I think we're definitely going to be keeping up with what's up in Buffalo and what's going on there because it's a dumpster fire. And I feel bad for Buffalo because this was one of the teams that should have been on the up and coming but have caved themselves in because of just purely bad contracts and bad management, and it's ended up them being here. So we'll see where they go from here. As we are getting near the end of the podcast, though, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get on to the final thoughts for everyone for their team this week and whatever else they would like to add. So I'll send this one off to Kelvin on his final thoughts.
Well, my final thoughts from the last cast got answered pretty well because the Flames got Derek Ryan back. And the coaching change brings grit. And so I'm just hoping that those two things in combination with hopefully then the way our schedule's looking, got more home games, they're not on the road as much.
Mm-hmm.
I just hope the Flames find a little bit of a grapple on the standings and are able to pull some wins together because that's what they need, if anything. They don't need to be beautiful wins. They don't need to play spectacular, but just get on a winning streak. And hopefully that can start this week with some new coaching. Of course, not in Edmonton for tomorrow night's game. But after that, hopefully we'll be steady with the coaching.
And Mark, your final thoughts?
Yeah, I hope Vancouver can, make the right decision. And in my opinion, they ride Demko. And I think that's the key. I mean, you don't want to burn them out. We've seen that happen before with other goaltenders. But I think you've got to get the points going here now. And I mean, looking at the standings, in some cases now, I think there's only one team that that team has 5 games in hand on Vancouver without having the standings right in front of me right at the moment. I think it's either 2 to 3 games right now. So all they can do is they just have to chip away. It sounds so simplistic, but game at a time. And if they play a smart game and look after, no high risk, loosey-goosey plays where you're giving easy breakaways like they were early in the season and 2-on-1s and all this, then I think it's very possible that they can, over the next number of games come out with a winning record. And that's going to be the key. There's no room for, going 2-5 or whatever in their next 7. If they do that, then basically, even if it's not mathematical, I think the season will be done because you just can't continue that. So Good on them last night, and hopefully they can keep that going.
For the Oilers, I hope that we could bounce back this weekend against Calgary. But even if we don't, we have Ottawa coming up, and hopefully we could pull away with some good games against Ottawa there in their last couple of games. I think we have like 5 games left with Ottawa. But we need to start stepping it back up, and Tippett needs to figure himself out and to actually put good defensive pairings instead of playing the vets all the time like Chris Russell. And I still don't understand why we're playing that guy more than our younger, better defenseman. Makes no sense to me. But I hope that we're able to bounce back and get some big dubs on the column and maybe get back into second as Winnipeg passed us in the North Division. But thank you guys for tuning in. It was an amazing episode. We talked about a lot. I ranted a bit about how stupid Tippett is at some moments of time. It was a fun episode, and I'll see you guys all later. Adios, amigos.